Guys, come on back. Welcome. X's and Knowles presented by Knowles247.com. We're doing our spring position preview, a.k.a. our biggest storylines that we are looking for as Florida State starts its spring practices. If you saw our videos this week and last week, we talked about who was going to be throwing the ball. We talked about who was going to be carrying the ball. But now we're going to be talking about who's going to be catching the ball. An area last year that was abysmal for Florida State, coming off a year before where they had two guys drafted in the NFL, and Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. Obviously, a lot of stuff happened last year. The passing game was atrocious. We obviously, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that my colleagues and I expect an improvement. How much of an improvement? That'll be interesting, because Florida State is integrating a bunch of new position players, some highly touted guys they got from the transfer portal, some guys with a lot of production at a high level, and some guys with a lot of potential that they showed at a high level, and then integrating them with a very talented young core of dudes. It is a position group that has question marks all over the field. And Adam, how important is it for Florida State's receiver group to have an improved level of play this year? It was pretty hard to watch last year.
Yeah, it was hard to watch for a number of reasons. Drops being a big one, being a big part of it. I think it's obviously pretty obvious to say that you need the wide receiver position to work if you're going to have a successful offense in 2025.
Yeah.
The 2025 version of football. They need to get more production out of this position group. You went from the beginning of their time here with the Keyshawn Heltons of the world, and then you kind of upgraded the Micah Pittmans and the Johnny Wilsons and the Keon Colemans, and then it was like, I don't know what last year was.
Yeah, you were building, and then it just fell off.
It kind of followed the pattern of this football program to some extent. So they need to get back to, I don't even know how good they need to be. They just need to get back to having some level of consistency. Like, I don't think in 23 that was necessarily like a really good wide receiver group with Micah Pittman and Johnny Wilson in his like kind of coming out party. But they were at least consistent. They were tough. They were physical.
Yeah, 22. 22 for sure.
Yeah, 22. Yeah. They were tough, physical in the run game. They blocked really hard for each other. It mattered everything they did when they got out there on the football field. You got to get back to that, and just finding a level of consistency would go far in this Gus Malzahn offense that is going to want to push the ball vertically down the field.
And I like what you said, because it felt like also the roles were defined. Like Pokey Wilson had a role, Micah Pittman, like you said, had a role, Johnny Wilson had a role. And you made a really astute point, Adam, that the receiver room has kind of gone the way of the entire football program from 23 to 24. 23, you hit it big on a transfer. You had a lot of success. And then 24, you also bet on some new transfers, and it just didn't work out in a really disastrous fashion. You're doing the same thing again, largely in 25, and who knows what the results will be. Kev, do you have any sort of feel for how these different pieces are going to mesh together in the Malzahn Norvell offense? I mean, are you hopeful? You enjoy watching the forward pass. You are a pass guy. I'm sure you did not enjoy any of what you saw last year.
Yeah, I think really, if you've been paying attention to the broader scope of college football and even the NFL, how much these offenses are being dictated by the success of the wide receiver position. I think it's no surprise that FSU had one of the worst wide receiver groups in 2020, 2021. They had an awful offense to boot last year. If there's a criticism that I think that we should bear as people covering this football team, it's that we saw this coming. We saw that they were going to have a wide receiver room that was not impressive. That was not filled to the brim with guys that you felt like could win you football games. And we didn't emphasize the importance of that position. You're seeing it more and more in the NFL. These guys getting huge contracts. In the modern football game, it's important. And I think that if I'm going to give credit to this staff over this offseason, they threw a lot of money at this position, and threw a lot of emphasis at this position because, I mean, we've seen it directly over the past 4 years. The rise and fall of Florida State football has pretty closely followed the rise and fall of the wide receiver position. If you can't trust your guys to win one-on-one on the outside, then you can't. Then the defense can put numbers in the box, and it doesn't matter what you do.
Especially in an offense predicated on matchups, playmakers, things like that. You need to have some actual playmakers at the position. And to Florida State's credit, they went out and got some guys that have shown either flashes of it, like USC transfer Duce Robinson, or dudes before injury, like Squirrel White, did it at a very high level his second year at Tennessee in the SEC. So very two intriguing pieces there. You mix that in with another guy they brought in, Jordan Scott, who is a highly coveted JUCO prospect. Geez, he's got a 6'7", 219. Like Matt, you won in a battle with your old Padawan Kenny Dillingham for him with Arizona State. They wanted him bad. So it's interesting, man. There's a lot of new pieces. A lot of younger guys to kind of that have an expanded role, and some guys that have been here for a while where it's time to prove you belong. So Adam, with all of that stuff swirling in that narrative cauldron and bubbling into a wonderful YouTube video, what is the storyline that sticks out to you the most for this group?
I think everybody's naturally is going to go to like, is Duce Robinson the man? Obviously, he's the highly coveted wide receiver transfer prospect coming in from USC. Had some production there. Wouldn't define that production as like a true number one type receiver, but it always kind of looked like the potential to turn into a number one type at USC. Mm-hmm. But I really think that the bigger question for me is this it for Hykeem Willliams? Is this going to be his year where he finds himself? Because I don't think there's a more talented player in the room than Hykeem is, as far as like a height, weight, speed type of guy, a guy who can catch it short, catch it deep, catch it, intermediate, run all the routes, has like an AJ Brown type of body type. Just a guy that could really physically take over a football game with his speed and his size. So Ron Dugans is out. Tim Harris is in. Can they get better coaching in that room and get a guy like Hykeem Willliams up to speed in his third year in college football and really get some production out of him?
And if they could, at what role would that be? Would that be spelling Duce Robinson? Would that be opposite Duce Robinson? Like, where do you think if this is the year where he finally capitalizes on a lot of that promise that he showed really his freshman year, like around that Duke game?
Yeah.
Where is that going to be in this offense, Adam?
Yeah, I think it would be opposite Duce. So Duce would be what they describe as the 9 wide receiver. So if you think about Johnny Wilson and where he would have lined up in his time at Florida State, that's where Duce would be. Kind of the solo receiver side, into the boundary, or maybe like in the middle of trips. I don't know. They move him all over the place, but I think you would expect or anticipate Hykeem to be opposite of that. So think about like where Pokey maybe used to line up. Trying to avoid talking about like last.
Let it out, dude. We miss him. You were right. You were right.
But so it would be opposite. So he'd be like an off the ball wide receiver, opposite of Duce Robinson. So I think that's the 2 for them. I don't know. I call it the Z. So
you keep calling it whatever the hell you want, big man. Kev, Adam's talking about it's Hykeem's prove it year. What do you have from like that you want to see that is the most intriguing storyline to you for this position group?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I'm a scheme guy. I'll go back to who Malzahn is, what his offense has looked like over the past few years, and what I think is really interesting is they went out and got a bunch of big bodies. Mm-hmm. Jordan Scott 6'7", Duce Robinson 6'6". A lot of the like Hykeem Willliams, he's a big 6'2". What are they doing with those body types? Their offense at UCF, what Gus Malzahn was doing there was predicated on a bunch of kind of smaller receivers. These guys in the 5'10", 6 foot range. these kind of slot guys that could get downfield quick on RPOs, threaten third level defenders in the first few steps off the line. And well, now we're seeing they had big bodies in the room. They had a 6'4" Elijah Moore, but then they went and added 6'5" plus guys. What are they doing with that? Are we going to see a lot more screen game, or are we going to see less RPOs? Are we going to see more downfield throws? Are we going to see how does that mesh? How are we going to integrate these pieces into a fluid offense? I think with Malzahn, when we watched film about a month ago on his offense, yeah, we can call these receivers the 9, the 2, the whatever. It's really positionless football. We're going to move these guys around to get matchups. And how does that play? How are we going to use Squirrel White for a certain matchup versus Jordan Scott or Mekhi Danzy's speed? How are we going to see them have to try to interplay this, because they have tools. These are talented guys with a wide range of skill sets. So I think that's where I'm going to be looking for, not necessarily from a success standpoint, but I really am interested to see how they integrate these things.
And the thing and I think that's a really good point, Kev, because even you do have a lot of size. Malzahn did play positionless football, so it's like, how's that going to work with these big, tall, like static, like set pieces? If you look at Duce Robinson's game, a lot of his production at USC was from the slot. So this is a guy that's comfortable playing in space. So it will be interesting. There's a little bit more flexibility with some of those bigger pieces than I think people realize. So how will they be used? Mike is a Gus disciple. They are big matchup predicated plays that are designed to go to players based on the matchups that they have. They're going to exploit the unique talent and skill set of the dudes they have. My main storyline to watch is it's who's going to step up, but it's who's going to step up out of that really talented, like second year crop of players, like dudes like LaWayne McCoy, BJ Gibson, Elijah Moore. Like that's a guy that, man, if we could just get it locked in, like that's a kid that has tantalizing prospects. That's a dude that, has the potential to he's got the skill set to be maybe the most complete receiver, like on the team by next year. Like that kid is supremely physically talented. You got other kids like that can be weapons, like Camden Fryer coming out of the slot, coming off of an injury. That was a kid that was way more athletic than people gave him credit for. And then could it even be like a true freshman, like the polished product from Brevard County, Javon Boggs, like a guy who had 9 million yards in high school, a dude that has a skill set, Adam, like that we haven't seen him. Like we've seen prospects come in that have like elite skill set traits. Like this trait is a Florida State trait. We've rarely seen like the polished product at receiver that their trait is just getting open and catching the ball. The trait is production.
Yeah.
And that's something like that natural feel of space, where to find soft spots in the zone. If that's a dude that plays way older than he is, if that's a guy that can integrate and kind of take that Micah Pittman role, maybe already from 2022, what does that do to give Thomas Castellanos a reliable safety valve? Like, so which of that group of the younger guys is going to take this opportunity, cement their role, and become a factor for 25? Because they need to. Because one of them's going to have to.
Well, I think Boggs is the natural one that you would look to, because I think
even over like the LaWayne McCoys and the guys who've been in this program.
You're saying what you're talking about.
I'm putting him in there. Like which of that glob of like,
I think LaWayne McCoy is a guy who played a good amount for you last year, or at least got opportunities in there. So he would be the first guy that I would think maybe, if Hykeem doesn't take that next step, is a guy who you might be talking about as the starter out there opposite Duce Robinson. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about like the freshmen that were coming in, or those newcomers that are coming in, I think Boggs is a guy that's going to have a role this year for them. Just from the standpoint that I think he's got position flexibility, like, because I don't think he's a guy you've got to pigeonhole in one spot. He plays really physical, but he's also got very nuanced with his routes and stuff like that. Like I think he's a guy you could play in the slot. You could throw glance routes too. You could put him outside and run comeback routes too. Both things that Gus is going to do in his offense, within his offense. I don't think he's got the vertical speed to necessarily beat you deep, but he's just kind of he's tricky.
He's a
one of those.
technician,
He's
right?
savvy.
Yeah.
He's savvy. He's a guy that just. I'm anxious to see how his spring goes, and then he gets into we get into summer and the season. That's a guy. Obviously, Gus was very invested in him at UCF. Was a big commitment for them. And
Very
then
invested.
when they
yes.
get to Florida State, he's a guy that they focus on, and they get into the Florida State class in the wide receiver room. So I think that's a guy that, for me, and maybe not like a starter role, I think he's going to have a role though, and he's a guy that I'm excited for personally. So maybe I'm not answering your question, but maybe I'm just putting.
No, you are. You are. And anytime we can talk about people from Brevard County more, I like that because he has that dog in him, being from the toughest, most intimidating county in the state of Florida. So I appreciate that. Kev, anything else you want to add? Because there is another group on this team that's going to catch the ball, and that's the tight ends. And I think we all have like one collective storyline, but it's the essential storyline for this group. But I want to give you a chance to finish out any wide receiver loose ends that you'd like to tie up, or any cool things you'd like to mention. If you would also want to glorify Brevard County, this is your chance now. I'm giving you the open floor to do so.
Yeah, I know very little about Brevard County. Never been. No, I think Duce Robinson's going to have to be the guy, right? Squirrel White's an exciting prospect, but I think you need a guy. You need a guy that's going to win those one-on-ones. You need a Keon Coleman. You need a Johnny Wilson, someone who you can reliably trust to win one-on-ones. I don't think we should discount the consistent role that we were just talking about, but the game breaker is something that needs to happen. Watch Ohio State throughout the playoffs last year. Having Jeremiah Smith to just open up the ball game against good opponents, to open up the running game, to force safeties over the top and still beat them. Like that's a game breaker. I think that Duce Robinson has that potential, and it's just I haven't seen a receiver get to Florida State and get better in a while. So he's going to need to get better to be that. But that's another big question. Can Duce Robinson be a game breaker that wins you football games?
He's going to have more opportunities. Some guys, like, they thrive in that, like Jermaine Johnson did when he came from Georgia. Like those dudes, Johnny Wilson. It's happened at this school in the past under this head coach. Some don't. But even those guys, like even a Jalen Brown is a guy that I'm thinking of. That guy had a skill set, man, and they were really excited about getting him. There's a chance for him.
Why do you think they were so aggressive in bringing in so many big bodies?
That was my question.
I think to me, and I don't know if it's a hedge against the inaccuracy of the quarterback that they brought in. I know that a catch radius thing makes a play for it. I just think that maybe they're going to be vertical. Mike's vertical. Gus is vertical. I think that it maybe met up with the highest caliber of prospect that they could get with their investment level, tied with what they want their offense to do. Just said, hey, it makes more sense to bring in these tall guys. I do. I think it's like a catch radius thing, and I think and they're going to be good blockers too, because they're going to have to run. I think it was a catch radius thing, and maybe to try to up that contested catch rate. Am I looking at it a little too simply, Adam? What do you think?
No, I don't. That's kind of where my head is. I think it's a situation where you're just trying to help the quarterback out the best you can, create a bigger window for him, obviously, with bigger wingspans. I think some of it helps with the run game stuff. I mean, especially, I don't think that they were very happy with the effort they got in the blocking department last year.
It was so bad, particularly the first half. It was really bad.
I think some of it comes down to they wanted to get bigger and more physical out there for blocking purposes. But no, I mean, I think when people think vertical, they think you want to have guys that can run as fast as they can. Well, you've got Mekhi Dansey, you moved out to wide receiver. You've got Squirrel White who can run. You've got Hykeem. You've got Jalen Brown. These are guys that are, and Lloyd McCoy. There's McCoy and Jalen are listed at 6'1", Hykeem's listed at 6'2". Like these are guys that are not 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" dudes.
Yeah, they're not all massive. Yeah,
but they can run. They can get vertically. But you also can get vertically with back shoulder throws. It's these big long wingspan guys, comeback routes, and then they work their deep game off of that stuff. So they set the vertical pass up more with some of these stop routes, comeback routes, and back shoulder throws to help them be able to get past DBs. So I think a lot of it has to do with just trying to help Thomas out the best they can, and then make sure that they've got those guys in the pipeline for the future too. But yeah, I think the simple view is they want to help Thomas out and his accuracy issues. They also want to get more physical and better blocking out at the position too.
I think what's an interesting perspective here is looking at this as a reflex from last year, right?
Because
last
of reaction, year,
yeah. So I guess the charitable interpretation is that, well, last year we had a big quarterback with a strong arm, so the thought is to have these guys that can get over the top with speed and we can hit that guy downfield when he's open. Well, now we've got a quarterback with less of a strong arm, so we're going to rely more on the jump ball. The less charitable interpretation would be essentially we sold out on speed with Malik Benson and Jaylen Brown last year. That didn't work. So I guess we're going to sell out on height this year because what else do we do, right? Like last year it didn't work. So if we want to be a vertical team, maybe we get height this year. So that's a less charitable interpretation. I think I'm more willing to believe the first interpretation. Hey, DJ is a strong arm guy. We believe he can throw the ball 50, 60 yards downfield. So we want a guy that can outrace a safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to have a bunch of guys that are going to be catching contested balls when you have a strong arm quarterback, right? That's not really helping you out much. So I do think, yes, fitting the strength of Thomas Castellanos makes more sense, but I do think that there's a world where it's possible that this is just a knee-jerk reaction to last year's kind of failure in the transfer portal addressing the needs at wide receiver.
Deliberation versus desperation. I think that's going to be the key to a lot of the stuff that happens this season. Like we'll see why these decisions are made, and it's fun because you can look at them from both ends and see which way and interpret it how you want. Let's talk about a room that I think also needs some interpretation just on how the hell they're going to be used. And let's talk about the tight ends. Obviously, we've talked about it ad nauseum. I've made my opinions known on this subject. Mike Norvell, when he was running the offense, tight ends on the field all the times. Tight ends, double tight ends, this tight end, H-backs, whatever. Like tight ends have been a massive part of this Florida State offense. They brought in some new ones, like a guy like Randy Pittman. He came over from UCF, a dude with some pretty decent production. They got a talented kid like Chase Lofton as a true freshman. Landon Thomas was one of their most pivotal like retentions from last year to this year. But guys, how many of these dudes are going to be on the field at the same time? How do we think that Gus is going to use them? And ultimately, how much of a factor are they going to be? I feel like tight end was not a factor last year other than like causing people's blood pressure to spike every time one of ours dropped a football. Is it going to be a different story in 2025? Kev, what do you think?
Yeah, so if you watch Malzahn's film, they spread the ball a lot. It's a spread offense. It is firmly kind of lost its roots from that wing T era that you think of when you think of Gus Malzahn with the H-back and running a lot of power or running a lot of counter. No, they're not doing that anymore. They're running a lot of spread, lots of RPOs, really wide splits. And I think Pittman was kind of the embodiment of that. So he's not a guy that you're going to want to inline block a lot, but he's a guy that you can motion in. You can force teams to be in nickel packages, to get into dime packages because he's a receiving threat. And then you can motion him inside and get a one-on-one block with a safety where he's going to be able to outweigh that guy by 50 pounds. So I think that's what they're looking for the most part. Receiving threat tight ends that are big enough to punish you if you go into dime looks. or punish certain sort of nickel looks. So they're really just going to have one on the field for the most part. You'll see them throw two on the field sometimes, but I think Randy Pittman does a lot of the technical things of the position really well, and hopefully Landon Thomas, who I think has a little bit more physical talent, just in terms of top end potential, can learn from that and grow from that as someone who could kind of be a better version of that mold.
Yeah, it's funny because they have the glob of like the 6'2" to 6'4", 230-pound guys that are describe what you're saying, you know, like Thomas and Pittman and Lofton. They kind of have similar body types and profiles. And then you got the Biscuit Man coming back from
Hey,
Arizona
my
State,
boy,
right? Like,
Biscuit.
which is just like blocking supreme. And then that one
Welcome
play,
back.
and then
Welcome back.
then the one automatic touchdown play. That's always fun when they run that. Adam, what do you think, man? Do you think it's going to look like different? Like, we think it's going to be more of like Malzahn tight end usage? Will Mike fight to get his guys on the line and have like 2 or 3 of them on the field at once? Like, who wins this battle of tight end usage? And will this position be a factor in your opinion in 2020?
I hope if there's a fight that Gus tells Mike to go sit down in the corner and shut up, because we need to get going. You know, look, there is a place for 12 personnel. There's a place for 13 personnel, and they've got guys that, you know, I think you're going to be more comfortable this year. I think Landon Thomas in a year or two is a guy that you could project to be a little bit better blocker than what he was last year. You know, who he wasn't physically ready to be put in that position and was criminally asked to do that. Shouldn't have been asked to do that, but was. I think that's fair to say. So I think heading into this year, you know, traditionally, Gus has been a one tight end guy, an 11 personnel type of guy. I just don't think you're going to see Gus go away from that. And I don't think you're going to see Mike ask Gus to go away from that a whole lot either. I'm sure they'll find ways to do it. I'm sure down in the goal line, they're going to find ways to incorporate a Biscuit and do some different stuff with him. But I just anticipate them wanting to be 11 personnel because they're not going to want to be changing personnel as fast as they want to play. They want to be a tempo team.
That's a good point.
Don't rotate personnel a lot. So it doesn't make sense to get in 12 personnel and say you're going to stay in that down the field, or get in 11 personnel and then say, all right, we're going to bring an extra tight end on for this package. Just doesn't make a ton of sense. But we're going to find out. You know, for me, Landon Thomas is a guy who we haven't seen off the ball a lot. What's that look like for him? What's that transition look like? You know, Gus wants to use that like sniffer Y tight end. I think it's the 3 or whatever. Not that it freaking matters.
To us, it does. Accuracy.
Absolutely nothing. For the play calls, it matters. For their passing system, it matters.
Mm-hmm.
But so, you know, envision this player kind of being between the guard and the tackle and moving around within that framework of that box along the offensive line. So we haven't seen Landon do that a whole lot. Chase Lofton's a really tall, typical wide tight end. We haven't seen that a lot out of him. Biscuit, another guy who you would expect to see his hand in the dirt. So, you know, are they going to ask some different things of the tight end position? And are they going to want the hand in the dirt more as opposed to that sniffer H-back type role? I'm curious to see it. That's one thing that we're not going to get daily practice updates or whatever, but that's one thing I'm curious the most about coming out of spring is what does that tight end role look like in this offense?
Yeah. And are you asking guys to do what you want them to do, or do you adapt what they do based on some of these talented dudes that you have? It'll be interesting. I think that the tempo point, Adam, is monumental that you brought up, because Mike's teams have been deliberate, slow, lots of checks at the line. I think it will be interesting just to see how much the pace ramps up this year, if it does or not. That's an overall storyline for the offense. I would like to see the tempo cranked up some, and let's just see if that happens or not. Guys, I don't have anything else. I thought this was a substantive. It was meaty. It was full of info and fun, as our videos always are. Anything else you want to wrap up before we get out of here and get these people, give them a break so they can get the next one? Because we're talking O-line. Oh, yeah.
How many snaps are you going to see Amari Williams play tight end?
Oh,
0.
Ooh.
You think
I
it's a full transition?
Do you mean on the season, like per game? Give me some parameters here.
Season.
For the season, 10. Maybe 15.
I'll take the over.
Yeah, so will I. I hope the transition. I hope the transition is that. I hope the transition to defensive end is that good to where Adam's right. But
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see, dude. I'm not hopeful. All right, we don't need my pessimism infecting everybody's wonderful night, evening, or morning whenever they're watching this. Guys, we love you. Get ready for the next video. We're going to talk about linemen. Adam's going to be busting through the screen, and I am too, because I get to talk about a new center. And I'm excited. But anyway, keep your excitement to yourself. Just wait for the next video. Obviously, the only time you're going to be able to see it first is if you subscribe to this channel, put the notifications on, and just wait. Just sit at your desk and just wait. And don't leave and neglect your friends and family and your work. And just wait for our next video. And you'll be the first to see it and comment first so we know how cool you are. Anyway, I love you guys. See you on the next one. Keep chopping.